Well, they literally missed on Donald Trump by 1 inch with a bullet. They missed with their endless lawfare against him. Now he's in charge, and he's putting in all of these people that the deep state tried to knock off, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard and the fake no-fly list, RFK Jr. It really is something to behold. And let me say this. It is not ideologically partisan. Many of the names we've just discussed, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., even Elon Musk himself, were until fairly recently Democrats. In fact, Tulsi Gabbard was a staunch Bernie Sanders booster, or at least she was appalled by the way he was barred from running. I think it was in 2016 in the primary by Hillary Clinton's people. So, and even if you looked at RFK Jr.'s swearing in moment with his sort of family, they were Democrats. I mean, he's from the great Democrat family. I think it's to Trump's credit that a man who loves being in the center of attention, who loves the spotlight, who's a natural entertainer, has within his bosom big personalities who attract attention on their own right, who are on side with them, but not maybe perfectly on side rhetorically, for example. And Elon Musk is an example. I mean, the fact that Trump can abide world-class leaders in his cabinet, I think speaks to his, I think shows a side of his character that people might not have expected. What do you think about that?
Surrounding yourself with exceptional people in a variety of different ways, it's right on the politics, it's right on the merits, and I do think it illustrates, to some extent, again, lessons learned from Trump 1, but then also, to your point, the character and the nature of how he thinks of running a business, or if you were applying business principles to how you would run government. I mean, I've likened Elon Musk sitting in the position he is at Doge to basically bringing in the world's greatest entrepreneur, arguably, certainly of our time, or greatest management consultant, essentially, into the federal government with the Silicon Valley ethos of move fast, break things. And the same goes for lots of other heterodox thinkers who, as you note, are very formidable figures in their own right. I think what it in part reflects is that this isn't about Republican versus Democrat and partisanship. It's sort of about the machine versus everyone else, or the ruling elites versus the scourges of the ruling elites. Or another way of thinking about it is it's those who are against concentrated power centers, whether in the public sector or the private sector, versus those power centers themselves. And this can be defined as populism, nationalism, putting America first, the national interest first, standing with the little guy, standing with the forgotten Americans. But I do think one thing that unites most of these forces is this belief that there's been these concentrated power centers. They're rotted, corrupted, they're turned against the American people. They've been failures. And so this is like a turnaround artist being brought in with full power and with the greatest minds and intellects and people with experience to come in and radically reorganize and restructure the government and put it in alignment with America's national interest. And that's going to be a winner way beyond Republicans. And I think it's going to redound to the benefit, not just of Americans, but the rest of the world as well, to the extent it's able to fulfill this highly ambitious vision.
Yeah, I keep coming back to Mark Zuckerberg's statement where he basically jettisons political correctness, says he'll lay off 40,000 fact checkers. I'll believe it when it's actually done. But the most important thing in his comment, in my mind, Ben, was when he said he intends to lean into freedom of speech outside America too, including in Europe and South America. And he specifically said, and this is what caught my ear, with the support of the State Department, because there's no way that a company can beat a government anywhere. When you're operating in Brazil or France, you have to follow Brazilian or French laws. And you can say we're going to have First Amendment style freedom of speech, but if that's not the way it is in Brazil or France, you can't do it unless you've got Trump going to pick up the phone to Lula or to Macron and say, don't you touch my company or I'm going to tariff you. So And J.D. Vance in his speech at the Munich Security Conference, going right into the heart of Europe, not just Europe, but the EU, collectivist Europe, and saying, you guys are falling apart on free speech. You're falling apart on respecting democratic elections, like in Romania, where they voted for conservative populists and the authorities just said, we're going to not acknowledge that. It was a very interesting speech. It was a little bit about security, but it was mainly America saying, we're going to reassert our American values around the world, not so much as an empire with colonies, but they're just going to speak out more. And if American companies are punished in some way, Trump will clap back. I think there's a toughness to it. Some critics would say it's bullying, but I can't get over a few visual images, like when the head of SoftBank came and promised to invest, I think he said $200 billion or something. And the Japanese prime minister came and said he was going to invest, I think he said $1 trillion. And then one after the other, all these foreign leaders come and bend the knee, and it's almost like they're going to kiss his ring if he had one. And some of them are in awe. The Japanese prime minister said, well, I always saw the president on TV, and frankly, I found him a little bit frightening. He literally said he was in awe. But you might say, well, that's Trump, he's over the top. But I think any member of any nation wants to feel like their nation is great. And if their leader earns that respect from a foreign place, it trickles down to them too. To see the leader of Japan say he finds America awesome, how does that not make 350 million Americans feel just a little bit more awesome? And that's okay to have national pride. I don't know. I think there's something masculine and strong and great. And I look at what the Democrats have always put up, Tim Walz, David Hogg, that's not masculine and strong and great. And they've had sort of a war against masculinity on the personal level, but also on the global level. Like the idea of telling Panama, change your ways or we're going to reconquer the canal, that may sound like a lot of tough guy swagger, but it sort of works. I think that's part of it too. The emasculation of America happened at the micro level, but also at the global level. Everyone thought they could walk over America. And I think that in less than a month, that has been absolutely undone. What do you think?
I agree wholeheartedly. And I would say that the emasculation, which is probably something that's occurred across almost all of the West and has been a long project to do so, goes along with a slew of other policies, the radical gender ideology, trying to pit kids against their parents, trying to, essentially create and stir up tribal warfare among different groups throughout the West. All of it, in some measure, is about, first of all, obviously fighting against the underpinnings of our civilization and trying to pit us against each other and divide us. But it's also about suppressing and trying to get us to reject human nature and what we know to be true. We could have a great academic debate about, does every culture aspire to greatness, excellence, and achievement, and how do we define that? But certainly in the West, and certainly speaking for Americans, this beats within the hearts of all Americans. And we've been told that America is a bad place and that we shouldn't be proud of ourselves and that we haven't achieved great things and that our ideals are rotten or we never live up to them and that we're conceived in sin, et cetera, that men can be women if they want to be women, that, chemical castration for kids is okay. It's all about respecting and doing whatever you want and the like. And essentially, this is just a repudiation or rejection of all of it, which is really just a return to normalcy, to tradition, and again, a recognition of human nature and pursuing greatness, pursuing excellence, trying to achieve great things, having very high aspirations. That's who we are. That's what we learned when I was a kid in grade school, at least, before it was wholly corrupted. That's how it had been here. And we do have things to be proud of, and we do have things to aspire to. And why should we set our sights low? And why should we reject the things that, on a relative basis and an absolute basis, ought to be celebrated. So I definitely see that as a part of it. Like, it's okay to actually love your nation again and want your nation to achieve great things. And there's sort of an elation and there's sort of a rational exuberance, and you can finally take a deep breath and you're not walking on eggshells. And of course, a footnote to this, but a massive aspect of this, as you noted, is sort of the fighting against the censorship, and also that governments, as J.D. Vance emphasized in that Munich speech, particularly in Europe, are effectively operating like they're afraid of their people. Like, their people can't be allowed to speak openly and honestly about the ills of open borders and the invasion policy that's plagued the West, about the ills of progressive policies, about the crackdowns on free speech. It's been very interesting at Vance, not only in the Munich speech, but also in his first foreign speech on artificial intelligence, was emphasizing the imperative that there be no censorship in AI development. You noted Mark Zuckerberg talking about how he's going to work with the U.S. government to fight against censorship regimes abroad. And it's worth noting, and I've reported on this, that the censorship regimes abroad, like the Digital Services Act in the EU, threatens to destroy big tech companies that don't impose the content moderation standards, which are anti-free speech. I put content moderation in air quotes, from the EU and other places as well. And there's a boomerang effect, which is that if you have to adhere to those standards abroad, you're going to squelch American speech and the speech in other places that have free speech. Yeah. It's notable that Zuckerberg and others want to get on the right side of the administration. They want to partner with the administration against those regimes. You have the administration going out and telling the world, you should have free speech. You shouldn't try to impose these standards on the big tech companies. The State Department itself has said it's going to be laser focused in putting out its earliest kind of mission statement. It was only a few paragraphs. One of the paragraphs was on combating censorship, and we're not going to use the State Department to go after American speech, right, certainly, even if we're going to combat foreign foes. And on the first day, the president put forth an executive order combating the censorship industrial complex, prohibiting federal officials from engaging in censorship themselves or indirectly, and prohibiting them from using federal resources, i.e. federal money, grants, et cetera, towards censorship as well, and then also engaging in a review of the censorship activities that the Biden administration engaged in for the last 40 years. So this is a laser focus of the administration, and now we're seeing it play out on the world stage.